What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the broader markets. And break down what's happening with tomorrow as we have important news coming out that could cause a lot of volatility for the stock market. And why tomorrow's going to be a very big day if we see certain things pan out. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link that's down below or use my QR code right here to sign up. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100, you're going to get $20 for free Nvda stock. If you deposit $2,000, you're going to get $50 worth of Nvda. Deposits $10,000 to get $300 worth of the stock, or deposits $50,000 to get $1,000 of free Nvda. You're also going to qualify for a 3.6% APY base rates plus a 4.5% APY extra for 3 months, making it a total of an 8.1% APY. And the offer ends very soon, so please check out my link down below to sign up. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the market. So overall, the market is holding up very nicely. We mentioned that we want to see SPY lose around 677 for us to start turning a bit more bearish to attempts to fill this gap. And even though it would be very healthy to come back down to fill this gap before trying to bounce, that's not always guaranteed if we just keep on holding support. Also, SPY managed to close above 682. That's a very, very good sign, and a sign that SPY is showing some strength and that we just want to continue to uptrend approaching the ending of the government shutdown. So overall, this is looking a bit more bullish because SPY now has a nice inverse head and shoulders setup, and we're looking a bit more bullish overall, which could help us continue to pump more. On top of this, the QQQ is also holding support. We're trying to hold around this 617 area. If we lose this, of course, there is that gap below, but as long as we hold this, we could be looking for a bounce. Now, the QQQ is showing a bit more weakness because we saw some semiconductors sell off as a result of the negative news about Nvda, but overall, it ended up holding support and is trying to bounce right now, and we still have a lot of potential to go higher. So the question is, what pieces of news are coming out, and will the market get some kind of bounce tomorrow? Let's talk about what my predictions are, but I'll first break down the news. So the really important news that came out was that the Senate have approved an agreement that could end the government shutdown by keeping the government funded up until the month of January. We had a 60-40 majority vote, and so far things are looking quite optimistic, which is why the market's continuing to climb higher. Now, there was some news that came out that the House Speaker Mike Johnson was not 100% committed on a date, at least yesterday, but then it looks like we just got some news that we could be looking for votes to come out as soon as 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow, which is very important because tomorrow, that's when we could see the House beginning to vote on this. And if we get some good news and they do end up passing this on to President Trump's desk, then we could see President Trump sign this very quickly. President Trump said that he's in support of the overall agreement because he wants to get the government funded as soon as possible. And we're just waiting on the House. Sometime tomorrow around 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the U.S. House could be voting upon this. And if they approve this, of course, it's going to be bullish news because the government shutdown would be coming to an end. And that could once again help us get past this whole fiasco. So that could be another bullish catalyst to help the market continue to uptrend. As of right now, we look very optimistic and there is upside potential, especially if we get the news tomorrow that the shutdown officially is going to end. I believe that tomorrow in the afternoon, we could get the news that the House have voted in favor of the agreement. I think there's a very good chance of that happening, if not by Thursday. And when this eventually happens, President Trump will sign it pretty quickly. He said that he supports the bipartisan deal, and he will sign it just to get this done with as soon as possible. So that's very important to get the government funded up until the end of the year, and we'll see what happens at least after that. But for now, the market's holding up nicely. Now, there was some negative news that came out in the morning, which is part of why I think tech was a little bit weaker. The Japanese firm SoftBank said that it sold all of its stake in Nvda for about $5.83 billion, causing Nvda to drop nearly 2%. That wasn't the best of news, but then there was some good news that came out, at least for AMD. We had the CEO, Lisa Su, come out and say that Nvidia could be looking for double-digit shares in the data center AI chip maker. And on top of this, they're also looking for good growth in their revenue by about 35% per year over the next 3 to 5 years because of the insane demand for AI chips. So there is still some good news for the semiconductors despite some negative news that came out. Today is also November 11th. It's Veterans Day. So I just want to wish everyone a very happy Veterans Day and appreciate all the veterans out there. Tomorrow is also going to be Wednesday, November 12th. We have some mortgage data in the morning, but much of this is very minor. But starting at 9:20 a.m., we have Williams, from the Fed giving a speech. Paulson, Waller, Bostic, and Myron are all giving speeches throughout the day, and that's pretty much it for tomorrow. There's not much else coming out. Also, at least for Thursday, CPI was also scheduled to come out. We're going to see if it comes out or not, depending on the government shutdown news. But for now, we're just going to take it one day at a time, and we have lots of Fed speakers for tomorrow. On top of this, there's not really much earnings coming out, at least for tomorrow. Very, very minor earnings. But on Thursday, we do have Walt Disney announcing their earnings, which could cause higher volatility. So be ready for that just to be safe. And on top of this, I just want to add on that the fear and greed index is currently at fear. We're going to see if this holds or not. Momentum is also at greed right now, and the overall put to call option ratio is at extreme fear, but it's actually decreasing, which shows that puts are being closed slowly, and the VIX is dropping, which tends to be once again a bullish sign. So overall, things are pointing more bullish, and the market has more upside potential. So let's talk about the levels, then I'll give you guys my prediction from this point on. What do I think is going to happen moving forward? Well, it's very simple. If SPY is bullish, you want to see us continue to hold above 682, but notice that we have this trend line right here. We have this white trend line that's acting as our resistance. So what's happening is that as long as we're above 682, we're slowly uptrending with this trend line, and we could be looking for 685 to 687 next as our next potential target. We look bullish and we're favoring all-time highs. However, if we're bearish, if you want to be a bear, you want to see us lose 680 and 677. If 677 fails us, there is that gap to fill back down to 672. That's the more bearish case if we get some bad news. As of right now, SPY is bouncing and bouncing and bouncing near our EMAs, and we're holding up very well. We're breaking structure like this, and we look more bullish. So we are favoring that we want to slowly push for 685 to 687 and eventually push towards all-time highs. Looking at the current setup, we also have a left shoulder, a head, and maybe like a right shoulder that's kind of like slanted. And instead of forming a nice right shoulder to fill the gap, so far SPY is struggling to do that. The bears are struggling to get us back down to that gap, and the bulls have more control, and we're slowly doing this. It looks like SPY is going for a nice V-shaped recovery as of right now. As long as we don't lose 677, we're looking more bullish, and we're favoring an attempt to push towards all-time highs. The QQQ has a very similar setup. Now, it was a little bit weaker due to the negative news involving Nvda, but it's looking more bullish as we have two gaps above to fill. If you want to be a bear, you want to see us lose 617. So in case we do lose 617, there could be a gap fill back down to 612. But if we're bullish, you want to see us basically break and hold above 625. If that holds, this gap would take us back up towards that 629 area for a nice V-shaped move. Looking at the setup, okay, we have this left shoulder, head, and right shoulder. This kind of looks like a right shoulder, although it's not perfect since we didn't come down to fill this gap. But now, if the QQQ holds above 625, the setup is favoring the gap fill for 629 because the government shutdown might officially come to an end in a day or two, and that might be a very bullish catalyst. So I like to be very unbiased. Although we haven't officially broken out on the QQQ, the setup is holding up very well, and we are favoring upside with this government shutdown news about us potentially ending the government shutdown. If we lose 617, of course, there's always the possibility of us coming down to fill the gap to 612. And if that does happen, it's going to be another blessing in disguise because I do see that as another buying opportunity. So either what's going to likely happen is that, the bearish cases, we come down to fill the gap and then we just, pump, or we don't get much of a gap fill. We just kind of consolidate for a bit. Then we just start to rally for 629. Either way, we look bullish. Right now, it looks like we don't want to fill the gap below. We just want to kind of like consolidate and slowly uptrend for 629. The chart does look a bit more bullish, especially once again, if we get the US House approving the new agreements to fund the government. There's a very, very good chance of that happening. And I would say the QQQ looks more bullish as a result. On the IWM, we're looking more bullish now because we're consolidating, we're holding up above our key EMAs. And overall, I think we're doing a good job. So looking at the IWM, we have a left shoulder, a head. not really much of a right shoulder. We're just consolidating. We need to lose basically 241 to start dipping lower. As long as we're above this, though, we're going to be favoring an attempt to push back up towards 248 for more upside. On ES, we also have sort of like an inverse head and shoulders, but it's not truly forming because we're just uptrending from here. There's also a lot of room left to go higher. So notice that we basically broke structure right here. We came down to retest our EMAs and we broke out. So it's looking more bullish. It looks like it wants to continue to push for 6,900. If you want to be a bear, you want to see us lose around 6,800 where the EMAs happen to be. If that fails us, we could be looking for the gap fill to 6,760. But as of right now, we have a slanted inverse head and shoulders, and we're looking more bullish, in my opinion. I think we're favoring the upwards direction for the upside back up towards 6,900. I think there's a good chance that ES tries to go higher, and we're favoring upside, in my opinion. For NQ, the same thing is going on. We have a left shoulder, a head, and a right shoulder. And I think that this is also favoring the upwards direction for essentially 26,000. Now, if we end up losing basically around 25,500, we're looking for a dip back down towards 25,250, and we're going to have to see what happens after that. But overall, I think the odds favor this inverse head and shoulder setup, and now NQ is looking more bullish because we keep on getting back above our EMAs. We touch them, we bounce, we touch them, we bounce. We're slowly going for that 26,000 mark. We look more bullish to me. Bitcoin's looking a little bit weaker. It did come down a bit. We're going to be watching for a bounce near 101,000. Could be dipping a bit more before it attempts to bounce right here. But overall, it's in a consolidation stuck between 106 and 101,000. We could dip a bit before it tries to bounce, so keep that in mind. For Tesla, this is looking a little bit more neutral. We have resistance at 445. We want to see if Tesla's about to see a pivot because there is some good news for Tesla. There's a possible left shoulder, head, and maybe a right shoulder forming. I know it's a little bit tricky to see. If we hold up a 445, Tesla's looking for the 450s again. But if we reject here, we could be looking for a move lower. If we can't hold above 440, we could return to the lows we saw from today. I'm hoping that Tesla tries to reverse here because there's a possibility that Tesla is going to try to make a higher low. If we attempt to do this with the government shutdown ending, we could see Tesla attempt to go back up to 450 for the inverse head and shoulders. We need confirmation to see if Tesla could break resistance, but we'll see if we get that bounce. There is most definitely potential, in my opinion. Looking at other tickers such as Nvda, I think that we're looking more bullish. We clearly have a left shoulder, a head, and a right shoulder. But we need to see Nvidia bounce here. I don't want to see Nvidia lose 190. If 190 fails us, we're looking for 186. As long as we hold near 190 and we get back above 194, we could be looking for a nice V-shaped recovery for the inverse head and shoulders. Hopefully Nvidia tries to bounce here. There's also, I think, the gap down here. There is technically a gap around 188. So in case we do come down there, it's also possible we dip a bit before we try to bounce. But overall, I think this is due for some kind of bounce. Whether we come down to 188 and then bounce, or if we just bounce from here, there's going to be some kind of bounce coming. Apple's also helping SPY bounce because if you look at Apple, we're looking more bullish. This looks like a Wyckoffean style accumulation. Might dip and retest 274 before it bounces and looks for essentially 278. For more upside, it looks more bullish to me. We got a nice double bottom on Netflix. As long as we don't lose 1116, we're going to be favoring a pushback up to 1150. On MSTR, we're technically on a downtrend. We're going to see if we hold above 241. If we don't, we could be dipping back down to 228, and we'll have to see how it goes. On Celsius, you have an inverse head and shoulders here. As long as we don't end up losing 43, we could be looking for a bounce back up to 47.39. On Supermicro, we have a nice looking double bottom here. It could be looking for a bounce to 41.45, and we'll see what happens. Palantir is also looking for an inverse head and shoulders. As long as we don't lose 187, we're looking for a bounce to fill this gap back up to 198 for a temporary move up. Rivian is looking more bullish. We're up 10% right now. We were also talking yesterday about how this will likely bounce. It actually exceeded expectations. It looks like it's going for close to 20. Looks bullish to me. SoFi also has an inverse head and shoulders setup following SPY. It's going to likely slowly uptrend for essentially 32. AMD came down as we predicted. Now it's bouncing. We have an inverse head and shoulders like structure. As long as you hold above 244, we're going to likely slowly push for the 250s, and eventually 255 is coming next. On ARM, we also have a nice looking double bottom. As long as we don't lose 145, we're looking for a bounce to 155 next. On PayPal, we have an inverse head and shoulders as well. If we break 68, we're looking for 69 and 70 as our potential targets, so I see some upside. On Coinbase, The same thing is going on. We have a left shoulder, a head, and a right shoulder. So we could be looking for basically 312 and 322. So I see some potential to bounce as well. On Amazon, we also have an inverse head and shoulders right here. As long as we don't lose 246, we're going to be favoring a pushback up towards 252. On Meta, we also have an inverse head and shoulders. I want to see us break 631. I think Meta is screaming buy for a lot of investors out there, and there's a lot of upside potential in this stock. Google looks more bullish to me. Nice double bottom. As long as we hold above 285, we're technically on an uptrend. We should slowly push for 295 plus and then 300. Microsoft looks like it's bouncing. We're looking for an attempt for 513 plus. It looks more bullish to me. And Oracle has a double bottom, slight bullish divergence, favoring a bounce to basically 242. The majority of stocks look like they want to bounce. DJT also has a double bottom here. It could retest like 12.5 before it tries to bounce back up to 13. And finally, the VIX is on a downtrend technically. The VIX has to reclaim at least 17.5 for some kind of bounce to happen. As of right now, there's no sign of that. It looks like the VIX is looking bearish and may continue to fall back down towards the 16s as the market remains more bullish. The 10-year is going to also react to CPI possibly. It's very flat right now in a consolidation, not really doing much. And the dollar is on a downtrend, which tends to be bullish for the markets. Crude is also kind of flat, not really affecting things. So overall, it looks to me like SPY and the QQQ are on nice uptrends with inverse head and shoulders like structures. Of course, watch your levels in case we do come back down to fill these gaps. But even if we come down to fill the gaps, it's likely a buying opportunity. But as of right now, the gap fills don't look as likely. What looks more probable to me is that the market may just continue to go higher, especially SPY going for like 685 to 687, and the QQQ possibly bouncing from here and trying to break through 625. If we break 625, our next target is going to be the gap fill to 630. There looks like a higher probability for a bounce and more upside in the markets, especially because tomorrow the U.S. House is most likely going to be voting on this agreement to possibly end the government shutdown as soon as tomorrow or within a couple of days. The market looks very optimistic with this, and so far the setups look more bullish. So we'll see if the market continues to pump or not. With that being said, guys, I thank you all so much for listening. I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your guys' days. And I'll be back very soon with another update tomorrow morning before market open. Until then, I wish you all nothing but the best, and peace out.